Hello and welcome back to POLITICO Sustainable Future Summit. We hope you enjoyed your lunch break. We have a jam-packed session this afternoon, so stick around. My name is Paola Tamma and I'm a reporter covering industry and the single market for POLITICO Europe. And in this session, I'll be joined by France's Minister for International Trade and Economic Attractiveness, Franck Riester. Welcome, Minister.
Thank you. Hello. Hello, everybody.
And we'll be having a discussion on the future of supply chains. Just a few housekeeping remarks. Please don't hesitate to submit your questions via the Swapcard app under the box entitled Questions, and to tweet about this event with the hashtag Politico Sustainability. I'll be able to pick up one or two questions from the audience as we go. So we have little time. Let's make the most of it. Minister, welcome again, and let's get to it. France has been very vocal in asking that EU trade policy and all the trade deals negotiated by the EU are fully compatible with our environmental and climate goals. But to be sustainable can be many, many different things. And the EU, to be sure that it is sustainable in its trade deals, must pin down precisely what that means. So if it were up to you, what concretely would a country need to do to fulfill trade deals' green rules? Just sign the Paris Agreement, lower its emissions. What is it that you want?
Thank you so much. As you said, France is very committed to put sustainable development at the heart of our policies, and especially trade policies. And that's why it's the good moment to go further in this way, because, as you know, we are at a moment of the review of our trade policy. And we think that we have we need consistency between what we ask to companies, to citizens, and what we are doing as governments or as public authorities. And so with the Netherlands, we wrote non-paper at spring 2020 to focus on those specific issues of sustainable development, environment, biodiversity, deforestation. And we think that's important to put this priority in our trade policy through the respect of the Paris Agreement, as you said, through the carbon border adjustment mechanism, through specific instruments fighting against, for instance, deforestation. To sum up, we have to concretely put in our legislation some instruments to fight against carbon leakers, to fight against deforestation imported, and to make the Paris Agreement respected. And that's what we've done in our position regarding Mercosur. As you saw, we think that's not the moment for us to confirm the Mercosur negotiation, because we think that before we have to be sure that the Paris Agreement will be respected by the Mercosur countries, and that the increase of exchanges that could be created due to the free trade agreement wouldn't increase deforestation. And so concretely, we have decided to not only talk, but also act.
Let's go back to the question for a second. So would you want these criteria which you listed, the respect of the Paris Agreement, fight on deforestation, and you mentioned some specific instruments to fight against imported deforestation, are these the levels, the standards that you require the EU to insert in all of its trade agreements with its trading partners?
yes, we want that these items be in the heart of the agreement, either in the negotiation in the text of the agreement or in some engagement around, beside the agreements.
And how would you want this to be enforced? Because we know in trade agreements that enforcement is the real problem with the WTO and so on being under blockade.
Yes, as you know, France has asked for the creation of commercial the chief enforcement officer, Mr. Redonnet, who is the new chief. The person in charge of the enforcement in the EU, and we are sure that it will be very useful, to be sure, for sustainable development, but for all what is in the different agreements to be enforced, and to be sure that the all is enforced in these agreements. And that's why we are quite optimistic that thanks to this new organization, the EU would be more able to be sure that the agreements are really enforced.
And a final note on the Mercosur deal. It seems to me, from what you said, that France's no to the Mercosur is not a categorical no, but if we can come to an agreement on some conditions about deforestation, about the Paris Agreement, France will be willing to ratify it.
We'll have to assess, to define with our partners, the Commission, and in relation with the Mercosur, which is the good level of objectives we could create. We could decide on deforestation, on respect of Paris Agreement, how to be sure that the objectives are really achieved. So how we assess that the new organization of the EU would be an help, that's sure. And then after that, why not going further on the Mercosur agreement? Because we don't want to put the garbage 10 years of negotiation, you know. But we think that we have to be sure on sustainable development with precise items, as we've evocated, that the increase of the exchanges wouldn't increase the deforestation or impact on the environment or impact on the climate change.
Thank you for clarifying that. One question more generally, one argument that's often been moved against France and against this push to green trade agreement is that it's just a different type of protectionism, just cloaked into green. Because the basic argument is we are already asking our farmers and our industry to meet the toughest environmental regulatory standards, and we don't want them to be undercut by cheaper imports. So is it just protectionism painted green?
No. The fact is that's sometimes difficult for companies that who have to respect some rules more strict around the sustainable development. They have to transform their supply chains or their production chain to respect our legislation, and that's a good thing. And they are in competition with companies that are producing with different laws. That's a problem. But I think that's a problem that could be solved thanks what we do in the multilateral level, fighting against surcapacity, for instance, or against a certain dumping. But we think that the main problem is the leakage of carbon, of the deforestation in protein. And so we have to create some mechanism that can improve the capacity of the country of third countries to improve their production in regards of the sustainable development. And the carbon border adjustment mechanism is typically this kind of tool that can improve the quality of the production regarding sustainable development, and then globally enable to have a good influence on the carbon leakage.
I think I know what you're getting at. I would like to chat to you about something a bit more specific, which is France's recent reshoring push. So the need to have shorter and more localized, more regionalized supply chains. This means, in some cases, bringing production away from where it currently is, be that Asia or Africa or the Near East, back to Europe. What are the diplomatic consequences of such a move, and how will France seek to mitigate them?
You're right. It's an important thing to exchange with our partners. We think that due to the crisis, we have noted that there are some problems of supplying. We have to review specific supply chains, for instance, in health sector. And so it means perhaps diversifying our supplier. It means, for instance, looking how we could stock some products. And sometimes, as you said, we think that we have to reshore certain supply chains. And so that could pass through the reshoring in the neighboring of EU, not only on reshoring everything in the EU. I went to Morocco, for instance, and I had discussion with Moroccan government to see how we could have a complementary between within the certain supply chains. And so we are working concretely thanks to tender in specific supply chains in France. We have some tools as EPCI that can, in certain supply chain, enable us to rethink our supply chain in Europe. And we have discussions with our partners to see specifically in a certain supply chain how we could work together to reshore supply chains, but closely to EU, not only within EU. And so I will go I will go to Indonesia, Malaysia, and we will have to have this kind of discussion with our partners.
One question which in this debate is often not asked is, what is the cost to consumers of this move? Because obviously, if production has moved to a certain area of the globe, it's mostly, not only, but mostly for cost reasons. So bringing it back into a higher cost area like Europe or its neighborhood might bring the prices up of these goods. So why should A, taxpayers' money be used to subsidize this move, and B, consumers bear the cost of higher products?
You're totally right. That's why that couldn't be all the supply chain that would be reshored in Europe. It's impossible. We have to select specific supply chains which are critical. And and we have to discuss with companies which are behind at the end of the chain, to see how part of the cost could be taken by the companies. And after that, it will be the choice as well as either of the authorities for medicine. It's a choice of independence, and independence sometimes has a cost, or a choice of consumers that would prefer to buy a product produced in Europe or nearby than produced at a place very far from Europe. And we see a big evolution in the consumer behavior and how they decide to buy and to consume, and more and more the social responsibility, sustainable development responsibility as well is more and more taken into account in the decision.
So after China 2025, we'll see a Made in Europe 2030. It seems to me that Europe is very much walking down the line of more localized production and more consumption of the products at home. So less a focus on exports and trade and more of a focus on producing and consuming here. Would I be right in the assessment?
No, sorry, I haven't understood your question.
I was just thinking that, as you probably are aware, China had a strategy called Made in China 2025. And part of that strategy was very much subsidizing its own domestic production and increase the purchasing power of its own citizens. So focusing on domestic production and consumption. Is that what Europe's going after in some sense?
No, we are not in this way of thinking. We think that it's important to discuss with our citizens, and I think that the public opinion is getting more and more conscious of the issues regarding trade, and we think that it's important to give them the more transparency around how are created the supply chains, how the products are produced, so that they could make the best decision.
Thank you for that. We are running out of time, but I'd like to take at least one question from the audience. So I'm going to pick the one from Louise Curran, who asked you, do supply chains inevitably need to get shorter in order to be more sustainable? And if you could keep it a tight answer, please.
I'm sorry, I have some problem of hearing. Could you repeat your question? Sorry.
I repeat, of course. So I'm picking a question from the audience, from someone named Louise Curran. And her question to you is, do supply chains inevitably need to get shorter in order to be more sustainable? And we're running out of time, so please keep it a short answer if you can.
No, that's not necessary. We have to know more precisely how the supply chains are managed, and we have for each supply chains to decide and to work with the companies how we could better be more sure that the supply chain is sure. I mean that it could pass through reshoring, it could pass through shortening the supply chain. If all the supply chains is in the same place, even if it's Europe, even if it's France, it could be dangerous for certain risks to have all the supply chain within the same country, within the same area. And so it's sometimes better to diversify and the areas of production of the supply chain, for instance.
Thank you so much, Minister, for being with us. I think in this discussion, I've learned that we need to take a look at trade deals, and for Europe to decide how to make them sustainable will be a tough exercise, that we still haven't worked out the real specifics of how to do that. That the idea is not to limit our trade with partners, but to qualify it, and that to ensure the stability of certain supply chains, Europe will look at nearshoring or reshoring some parts of its critical assets. And for that, we need a dialogue with the partners who are currently producing those assets, and also buy-in from consumers and from producers. So thank you all very much for that.
Thank you.
Good summary. Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We don't have time for the break. We'll jump directly to the second session. And I'm very, very welcome to introduce you Philippe Luscan, who is Executive Vice President of Global Industrial Affairs at Sanofi. Bonjour, Philippe. Yeah. Very welcome to join us.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we have a limited time. I'll try to make the most of it. And I just remind to the audience who might be connecting now to please ask questions via the app so that I can put them to Monsieur Luscan, or to use the hashtag political sustainability to comment on this event online. So Philippe, I would like to ask you about the strategic autonomy concept. This is something that we have heard growing more and more and gaining more momentum in Europe, although we're not entirely sure of what that means. Your CEO, Paul Hudson, penned an op-ed in Les Echos, in which he wrote that European countries must invest in their industry to achieve what he called health sovereignty. So can you just explain, what does Sanofi mean for health sovereignty, please?
Yeah, I think it's a very important topic after we have heard our minister in France. You know, health sovereignty is, for me and for Sanofi, is an essential component of the life in Europe. And we have seen this during the pandemic. Being able to adjust to the need in drugs production is a key point. I have seen in some products of the portfolio of Sanofi, the demand increased by tenfold because of hospitalization, and it was key to have the ability to adjust. And Sanofi, to the example, that's my second message, is an example of health, key actor. We are the main producer of drugs and vaccine in Europe as Sanofi. And why? Because we have built over years a network. We are one of the leaders in production of pharmaceuticals and vaccine in the world, with 70 sites all over the world, of which 40 are in Europe. So we have, as a politic, as a strategy, this local, regional proximity in order to produce in the region as much as we can, in order to be able to be an actor of sovereignty for Europe. And this is a model, the way we are organized. We are organized regionally. We produce in Europe for Europe. We produce in US mainly for US. We produce mainly in Africa for Africa, not all, but most of it, in order to be able to adjust and to be a health partner for all the authorities. And we have seen the validity of this strategy over the pandemic. It helped us to adjust. And last topic I wanted to say is, Sanofi has posted 1 year ago a strategic opportunity that we are going to create a chemical company for APIs, active ingredients, which will be built in Europe in order to help other companies to purchase from this company and develop some relocalization of APIs for other labs, not for Sanofi, because for Sanofi we produce 80% of our drugs in Europe for Europe, but we are going to create this vehicle, this new company, in order to help this health sovereignty development, some of the relocalization we are talking about.
So let me give some context for our viewers. Currently, Europe imports 70% of its APIs, which are the active principles used in drug manufacturing. And of those, 60% come from just China or India. And Sanofi wants to create this independent company, you say, to produce these APIs in Europe. And its ultimate goal, as you said, is reduce reliability on other countries. If it succeeds, that will be a huge market share, of course. So what would be the relationship between Sanofi and this new entity?
Yeah, it will succeed. It will succeed. There is no doubt it will succeed. So just thanks to remind the figures. But Sanofi is the reverse of the figures you gave. As you said, 2/3 of the APIs used in Europe are imported. And for Sanofi, 80% of our portfolio of APIs is produced in Europe. And that's the reason why I was saying Sanofi, for me, is a model of the industry that we should develop. And that's the reason why we are taking actions in order to show the way to other companies and to Europe. So we are going to create this company in order to help purchasing from Europe APIs that we are going to produce. And we are going to be the number one leader in APIs in Europe in order to be a vehicle aside of Sanofi in order for other laboratories to purchase European APIs production. So we are going to be a shareholder of the new company, which will be created 1 year from now, a little more. And there will be the offer of Sanofi for Sanofi portfolio, and there will be the offer of the new company producing for as what we call a CMO in our industry for other laboratories. So we foresee a good success, and it is of course important for Europe to organize his health sovereignty. It is so important today, tomorrow, and in the next future.
In terms of your offer to what will be your competitors once this new entity of which you will be a shareholder is found, currently the reliance on external API supply is also due down to cost reasons. France and Europe are high-cost regions, so producing them here and with higher environmental regulations will probably face higher costs. Why should your competitors turn to you?
Alors, we see that it's a business which is already in Sanofi, which is successful. And the reason is because having a European offer is a guarantee of quality, supply diversification. I think the minister was explaining the diversity of supply chain. So to have an offer of a European supply chain is key. Don't forget, we are talking about drugs. And drugs, there are two mandatory objectives when you produce drugs. You need to have a high quality, it's important for patients, and you need to have a reliability. When you are in a hospital, you are expecting to get the drugs available. And that's the reason why this offer, which is already successful, we see a growth in this business already, but by putting itself as a European stock exchange, we envision to double the growth of this business because there is a demand. There is a demand of more proximity from drugs. Importing drugs, it's okay, but when you see the variability of the demand, like in a pandemic, you are so happy to have your European offer to balance your risk and to make sure you get them.
Thank you, that's very clear. Let's go back to the op-ed penned by your CEO, in which Paul Hudson asked for additional exceptions from the EU state aid regulations to allow EU countries' investment into strategic sectors and factories, arguing that this will strengthen the competitiveness of Europe and achieve, to some degree, what he called the health sovereignty. So wouldn't this give... I interpret this as meaning he wants the French government and other governments where Sanofi is present to be able to give money to a company like Sanofi to produce more locally. Wouldn't this give you an unfair advantage compared to your competitors, and how should this state aid be administered?
Alors, I think, the topic is not Sanofi, the topic is it's a European one. I think it's very important for Europe to, in French, we say accompagner or to partner with some big industries and manufacturers in order to promote the innovation, the production, and the industry. We see today the importance of industry for Europe. It's strategic. And we have some good examples. For example, we have a partner with the French government, for example, for a huge investment in a new vaccine plant in France, close to Lyon, that we have posted with President Macron last June, which is a very important initiative. And we see the importance of vaccine today. So being able for Europe to partner with some industries beyond Sanofi, of course, and for all the industry who want to develop a European offer is important for the future of Europe in the current medicine, but also with a new medicine, in order to bring innovation in R&D, in production, in Europe, because we have the capabilities, we have the ideas, and I think this partnership concept is very important for the future of drugs and health in Europe. Don't forget that there is a lot of talent in Europe in health. Europe has been traditionally a territory of talents in medicine, in pharmacy, in production, in laboratories, and you see that. And we have to fuel this innovation in order to keep, develop, prepare the future of health in Europe.
But let me just get back to the point of the state aid. So what is it that you want from regulators in Europe and in Paris to make this a reality?
Alors, I would say three asks, to be clear. I think it's important to embed in the pricing of drugs a criteria of production in Europe. You know, I think you asked a question to the minister before me and I was listening. You know, of course, producing in Europe is a little more expensive than importing from other low-cost countries, if I can say it that way. So to have an incentive on producing in Europe, for Europe, when we fix the prices of medicine, is one ask. I think it's important. We have to be consistent in our policies. The second one is when industries like Sanofi, but others, propose some innovation investments in the new technologies, in biotechnologies, in gene therapy, in the vaccine of the future, etc., etc. It's important that Europe be a partner, a financial partner, an economic partner to this industry in order to invest in Europe for the future of health in Europe. That's the second one. And the third one is also a topic that you didn't mention in your questions, but which is, I would say, the equity of rules concerning quality, concerning environmental. We are raising the bar, which is very good, which is very important because there is no sustainable industry if we are not improving the quality, the environmental footprint, etc., etc. But I think it's important to fix rules for Europe, for European actors, but also to fix rules for imported products into Europe. And the tax system should be a way to equalize the rules, not only in Europe, but for the importation into Europe. And I think that's the three asks, which I think are important in order to keep the development of a European health system organization.
Yes, hello. I'm afraid that we briefly lost Paola, but she was concluding her interview, for which we obviously thank Mr. Luscan. And we will be right back with our next session, which is moderated by Jan on the EU's plan for a circular economy, which will take place at 2:30. So please stay tuned for that. Thank you very much.